Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to History for Sleep, the channel that gives slow history and calm videos for a good sleep. If you like our videos, please like and subscribe to our channel. Now dim the light. Maybe turn on the fan for a soft background. Tonight we are drifting into the history of ancient Egypt. Close your eyes and let your breath slow with the rhythm of the ancient world. Far beyond the noise of the present, beyond the hum of machines and the glow of city lights, there lies a river that never truly sleeps. For over 5,000 years, it has flowed quietly through the heart of the desert, carrying life, faith, and memory through the sands of time. It watched the birth of pharaohs, the rise of temples, and the whispered prayers of countless souls beneath its moonlit surface. This is the Nile, the lifeblood of ancient Egypt, a river that was not just water, but a god, a calendar, a promise of eternity. Tonight, we drift down its calm current, past villages of clay and palm, past the soft glow of oil lamps and the chants of priests calling to the heavens. You'll hear the silence between the ripples, the breath of the land itself, and perhaps the echoes of those who once stood here, gazing at the same eternal stars. So, lie back, breathe softly, and let the waters of history carry you into another time. Your journey along the Nile begins now. The night settles over the desert like a silken veil, and the world of ancient Egypt exhales a sigh of stillness. You stand at the edge of the Nile, the river of eternity, watching as the moonlight shivers upon its slow, dark surface. It moves not with haste, but with wisdom, as if the water itself remembers every dawn, every dynasty, every prayer ever whispered into its depths. Around you, the desert sleeps in silence, save for the distant croak of frogs and the faint rustle of reeds. The air is warm, scented faintly of wet earth and palm leaves. In the soft glow of the moon, you can see small clay lamps flickering from the homes across the riverbank, each flame a heartbeat in the ancient rhythm of life that never truly ceased. Here, along this sacred ribbon of water, the Egyptians lived, dreamed, and built their eternity. To the people of ancient Egypt, the Nile was not merely a river. It was the breath of the gods themselves. They believed its yearly flood came from divine generosity, from the tears of Isis or the blessings of Hapi, the god of the inundation. When the river swelled and kissed the soil with rich black silt, life returned to the barren lands. Farmers rejoiced, children played in the shallows, and priests offered songs of gratitude to the heavens. Without the Nile, Egypt would have been nothing but a sea of sand and silence. But with it, the land flourished, glowing green against the golden horizon. The rhythm of the water dictated every rhythm of life. Planting, harvest, worship, and even love. It was a calendar, a messenger, a silent guardian. And as night draped over its surface, the Nile reflected not only the stars above, but also the hopes of millions who depended upon its eternal flow. Imagine standing there, as an ancient farmer might have thousands of years ago. The fields of barley and flax stretch endlessly before you, shimmering silver under the starlight. You can hear the gentle hum of insects, the soft lapping of waves against the shore, and somewhere, a distant hymn drifting from a temple across the water. It's a song for Happy, the bringer of abundance. Your skin is cooled by the night breeze that glides down the river, carrying with it the scent of lotus flowers. In that moment, you would understand. The Nile was not just a body of water, but a living being, one whose moods governed your fate. If it rose too high, it swallowed homes. If it rose too little, famine crept through the villages. But tonight, under this calm moon, the river sleeps as gently as you do, endless, nurturing, and divine. The ancient Egyptians called their land Kemet, the Black Land, named for the fertile soil that the Nile left behind each year. That soil was their salvation, their treasure, their proof that the gods had not forgotten them. Along the riverbanks, fishermen mended their nets beneath the stars, while women drew water in clay pots that caught the moonlight like silver. Somewhere, a child's laughter mingled with the hum of the night, and a priest in a linen robe whispered a prayer toward the temple of Ra, whose chariot would soon rise again. The world along the Nile was both sacred and simple. The rich built grand villas shaded with date palms. The poor built mud brick homes cooled by the wind. Yet both looked to the river for life. Both whispered thanks to its flow, and both found comfort in its steady voice. A song older than the pyramids themselves. At night, the Nile transformed into a mirror of the heavens. The Egyptians saw in its dark waters the same stars that guided their souls through the afterlife. The Milky Way was their celestial Nile, a heavenly reflection of the river they knew so well. It was believed that when one died, their spirit would travel this divine waterway to reach the field of reeds, the paradise of eternal peace. And so, each night, when the world grew quiet, the river became a place of both rest and remembrance. Its current carried more than silt and reeds. It carried dreams. Every whisper, every offering, every song that touched its surface was borne downstream into eternity. You can almost hear it now, the soft sound of oars dipping into the water, the distant murmur of a fisherman chanting to the goddess Isis, asking for protection from the unseen. As dawn begins to bloom at the far edge of the desert, the sky turns from indigo to gold, and the Nile awakens once more. Birds rise from the reeds, calling to one another over the mist. The first light of Ra's sun catches the water, painting it in 1,000 shades of fire and honey. Farmers emerge from their homes, stretching, ready to greet another day in this timeless cycle. The river gleams as if it never truly slept, only dreamed, the same dream it has dreamed for millennia. Life continues, calm and eternal, along its shores. And as you listen to the slow murmur of its waters, you too drift toward stillness, toward that quiet space between waking and sleep, where history and dream gently entwine. Here, in the embrace of the eternal Nile, time does not pass. It lingers, endlessly flowing, forever soothing the soul. As the sun sinks beneath the horizon and the desert cools to a soft twilight hush, the Nile gleams with quiet devotion, a mirror to the heavens above. To the people of ancient Egypt, this river was not simply a force of nature. It was a divine being. They called upon it as they might a god, offering prayers, songs, and the first fruits of every harvest. The river's floods, which came faithfully each year, were seen as blessings, the very lifeblood of the gods spilling forth into mortal lands. When the waters rose, Egypt rejoiced. When they failed, despair rippled through the land. Every temple, every ritual, and every field owed its existence to this sacred waterway. Even now, if you listen closely in the hush of night, it feels as though the river still carries those ancient hymns within its current, a low hum of gratitude to something greater than humanity itself. Among the deities of Egypt, one spirit was most beloved for his connection to the river, Happy, the god of the inundation. He was depicted with a rounded belly, blue skin, and arms heavy with lotus and papyrus, symbols of life and fertility. To the Egyptians, he was not a fearsome deity to be appeased, but a nurturing one to be thanked. When the Nile swelled and brought rich black silt to the land, it was said that Happy had smiled upon Egypt. His floodwaters were the veins through which the kingdom's prosperity flowed. Priests performed rituals at the river's edge, tossing offerings of bread, honey, and fragrant oils into the water as the crowd watched in reverence. The soft sound of flutes and the rhythmic beating of drums accompanied the shimmering reflection of torchlight upon the ripples. To witness such a moment was to see faith made visible, a communion between earth and divinity, where every ripple was a whisper from the gods. Yet the Nile's sacredness extended far beyond Happy's domain. The Egyptians saw it as a bridge between the mortal and divine worlds. It flowed from the unknown, from lands believed to touch the realm of the gods, and ended in the Great Sea, symbolizing life's journey toward eternity. The annual flood was more than a natural cycle. It was a spiritual rebirth, a renewal of the promise between humanity and the divine. In temples dedicated to Osiris, god of death and resurrection, the flooding waters were celebrated as a symbol of his eternal return. The river's rise and fall were echoes of life and death, creation and decay, forever entwined. To live along the Nile was to live in harmony with that endless rhythm, to understand that even in its stillness, the water was a living pulse of divine memory, carrying the breath of the gods themselves. Each dawn, Azare, the sun god, began his celestial voyage across the sky. The Nile shimmered with his golden reflection. The people believed that Ra's light blessed the waters, infusing them with the strength to nourish all life. Every drop that touched the soil was sacred. The riverbank became a place of daily worship, men bowing their heads as they drew water, women whispering prayers as they washed clothes or bathed children beneath the morning sun. The Nile did not divide Egypt, it united it. Its waters linked distant villages, carried traders, priests, and travelers, and bound the people in a shared reverence for the divine. Even at night, when the sun's warmth faded and the stars took its place, the Egyptians saw the heavens as another river, the celestial Nile, where Ra sailed in his golden boat through the darkness, battling serpents of chaos until dawn returned. The cycle of light and water, day and night, God and man, all flowed together in harmony. On festival nights, when the moon was full, the banks of the Nile came alive with music and incense. Temples glowed with torchlight, and priests in white linen poured libations of milk and wine into the water, thanking the gods for another year of abundance. The people danced along the shore, the sound of their footsteps blending with the soft rush of the current. Children tossed garlands of lotus flowers into the stream, believing the blossoms would carry their wishes to the divine. The scent of burning myrrh hung in the air as families feasted, sang, and told stories of Happy's generosity, of Ra's golden path, and of Isis's tears that filled the river with her love for Osiris. In these moments, the line between the mortal and the sacred dissolved completely. The Nile was not a backdrop to life. It was life itself. It was celebration and silence, giver and taker, mother and mystery all at once. When the festival fires dimmed and the laughter faded, the Nile returned to its tranquil song. Its surface, smooth as glass, reflected the moon like a silver coin laid upon the world. The gods, it seemed, rested within its depths. A lone fisherman drifted in a reed boat, his or dipping quietly into the black water. He knew the river's moods as one knows the breath of a loved one. Calm, then restless, then still again. Above him, constellations traced the stories of gods and kings who had lived and died by this river's grace. And as the night deepened, the Nile whispered on, timeless and unchanging, feeding both gods and men alike. Its rhythm was eternal, a heartbeat in the body of creation. And as you listen, eyes half closed, you can almost feel that pulse yourself, steady, ancient, and endlessly soothing. The river that fed the gods still flows, carrying your dreams softly downstream into history's embrace. The sun, weary from its long journey across the desert sky, finally dips beneath the horizon. A hush falls over the fields as the golden light fades into shades of violet and indigo. The heat that once shimmered above the earth gives way to a soft, welcome coolness. Across the banks of the Nile, the day's last sounds drift through the air. The creak of wooden oars returning from the water, the gentle laughter of children, the distant bleat of goats being led home. The villagers of ancient Egypt begin to retreat indoors, their simple mud brick houses glowing faintly from within. Clay lamps flicker with small flames fed by oil and wick, their smoke curling upward like thin threads of dream. The Nile, now dark and glassy, reflects the first few stars appearing above. Night has descended, not with fear, but with familiarity. It is the hour of rest, of quiet conversation, of the world drawing a deep breath before sleep. In the fading light, the village transforms. Farmers rinse the dust from their arms at the river's edge, kneeling beside the water that sustained their fields. The scent of baked bread drifts through the narrow alleys, mingling with the soft hum of evening insects. As true night arrives, the village becomes a constellation of small fires. Families gather outside their homes, seated in circles, sharing the day's last meal. Clay bowls pass from hand to hand. Lentils, figs, a bit of honeyed bread. The air tastes of earth and grain, of smoke and river air. Some elders tell stories, their voices low and deliberate, shaping the myths that the young will carry into their dreams. They speak of gods who walk unseen through the night, of stars that are the souls of pharaohs, of creatures that guard the edge of the desert. The children listen wide-eyed, clutching woven dolls or scraps of cloth for comfort. For them, the world is alive in every sound and shadow. The night is not empty. It breathes, it listens, it remembers. In the silence between words, the river murmurs softly, as though echoing approval from the gods above. Inside the homes, light flickers upon walls painted with faint images, lotus flowers, eyes of protection, symbols of eternity. A small cat curls at the doorway, its golden eyes catching the lamplight. The cat, sacred to Batet, goddess of the home, keeps watch through the dark hours. On low tables lie baskets of dates and figs, simple treasures for the morning meal. The air is thick with the scent of oil and herbs used to ward off insects. A father rolls out a woven mat for sleep, while his wife whispers a short prayer to Isis, asking for safety and gentle dreams. Through open doorways, you can see families settling down together, their shadows soft against the glow of the lamp. The crackle of a fire fades to embers. The wind sighs across the sand. The Nile, patient and eternal, hums outside like the breath of the world itself. Beyond the village, in the fields that stretch toward the horizon, the night deepens. The moon climbs higher, laying a path of silver across the water. Farmers' boats rock gently against their moorings, ropes creaking softly in rhythm with the current. Somewhere far off, a heron cries out, its voice echoing over the stillness. The desert beyond is vast and silent, a sea of shadows where only the stars dare wander. Yet even there, the presence of the Nile is felt, a lifeline cutting through the emptiness. The river's cool breath carries whispers of life to every corner it touches. The villagers sleep soundly, knowing that while they rest, the Nile continues its eternal work, feeding the land, nurturing the crops, and connecting them to all who came before. It is a silent guardian, as constant as time itself. Near dawn, the first light of morning brushes the horizon with a faint blush of rose and gold. The lamps have burned low, their oil spent. A rooster calls from somewhere across the fields. Slowly, the village stirs. A woman steps outside to draw water, her reflection rippling in the dawn's pale mirror. The night's cool still lingers in the air, but already the promise of another hot day gathers on the wind. Children rub their eyes. Temples begin to sound with the ringing of bronze bells, and the Nile gleams once more beneath the newborn sun. Yet the memory of night lingers, a peaceful stillness that rests in every heart. For the people who live along this river, each night is not an ending, but a pause in the eternal cycle of life. The Nile flows on, patient and calm, carrying both the dreams of the sleeping and the prayers of the waking toward the horizon of forever. As the last traces of sunlight disappear beyond the horizon, the Nile transforms. The shimmering river that once sparkled under Ra's blazing eye now becomes something mysterious, darker, slower, almost alive. The night belongs to different gods now. The bright ones of day give way to those who dwell in shadow. Khonsu, the god of the moon, sails his silver boat across the heavens, while unseen spirits stir beneath the water's mirrored surface. Fishermen who remain out too late whisper quiet prayers to avoid offending them. They say that when the Nile glows too brightly under the moon, it is because the spirits beneath are restless. The gentle ripples that reach the shore are said to be their sighs, reminders that this river is not merely water, but the very breath of creation itself. In the hush of the night, every sound, the rustle of reeds, the splash of unseen fish, feels heavy with meaning, as though the river itself listens and responds. The people of ancient Egypt revered the Nile not only for its gifts, but also for its mysteries. They knew its moods, its tempers, its miracles. In its depths, they believed, dwelled ancient powers, crocodile spirits, and serpent guardians who protected or punished as the gods willed. The priests who served in the temples of Sobuk, the crocodile god, spoke of unseen movements in the river at night, ripples that came even when no wind stirred. These were, they said, signs that the divine was near. Villagers told tales of strange lights that sometimes appeared upon the water's surface, lights that led travelers astray or revealed hidden truths. Some believed they were the souls of those who drowned, gliding eternally between this world and the next. Others thought they were messages from the underworld, reflections from the stars of Duat, the realm of the dead. The Nile, to them, was a border between life and eternity, between the known and the unseen. The night along the Nile was never entirely silent. From the reeds came the murmurs of frogs, the flutter of herons taking flight, and the occasional groan of a crocodile shifting its heavy body upon the bank. Each sound carried an echo of the divine. To sleep near the river was to sleep beneath the gods' watchful gaze. Yet, there were also whispers of fear. Some said that certain stretches of the river were cursed, where offerings once failed to please the gods. There, the water seemed colder, darker, more still. Even the moonlight hesitated to touch it. No one lingered near those bends after dusk. The elders would warn their children, never step too close to the river at night, for the Nile remembers every life it has taken. It is a patient keeper of souls, they would say, and the shadows that move beneath its surface are not always made of fish. But to others, the night held not fear, but reverence. Priests from nearby temples often came to the water's edge under the moon, carrying small lamps and bowls filled with fragrant oils. They would offer prayers to Happy, the god of the inundation, thanking him for the lifeblood that flowed through Egypt's veins. The soft chant of hymns drifted across the river, their echoes blending with the sound of water against stone. To witness such a ritual was to feel the boundary between heaven and earth blur for a moment. The priest's reflections shimmered upon the surface as though mirrored by divine forms below. Sometimes, an unexpected breeze would ripple through the ceremony, cool and sudden, as if the river itself exhaled in response. In that sacred stillness, the Egyptians felt close to eternity, believing that the Nile's depths were a passageway through which gods, spirits, and dreams all traveled unseen. For the people who lived their lives along its banks, the Nile's shadows were as familiar as family. They learned to read its moods, the soft current before a flood, the calm mirror before dawn. Yet even after generations, its secrets were never fully understood. Some nights, the water glowed faintly green, as if illuminated from within. Other nights, it carried strange debris downstream, bits of reed, fragments of pottery, or objects no one could recognize. When these things appeared, the villagers would speak quietly among themselves. "The river remembers," they would murmur. "It shows us what lies beneath the past." For them, the Nile was both storyteller and witness, carrying fragments of history within its flowing body. And though they could not see what truly rested beneath its dark surface, they believed that every wave carried whispers from the time of the first kings, messages written not in ink, but in water. As the night deepens, the stars above and the river below seem to merge, one vast ocean of darkness and light. A thin mist rises from the water, cool and soft against the skin, wrapping the world in a veil of secrecy. The lamps along the banks flicker faintly, their reflections trembling upon the ripples. Somewhere, An old man leans upon his staff, gazing into the Nile's shimmering face. He sees not his reflection, but the memories of his ancestors, farmers, priests, dreamers, all bound to this river through time. He knows that long after he is gone, the Nile will continue to flow, carrying his story into the endless rhythm of life and death. The secrets of its shadows will remain, half seen, half felt, eternal, like the gods who dwell within them. And as the moon drifts higher, casting its path across the water, Egypt itself seems to breathe in unison with the river, slow, ancient, and forever awake beneath the stars. When night settled over ancient Egypt, the temples did not fall silent. They merely changed their rhythm. As the people in nearby villages drifted into dreams, the priests awoke to a different kind of duty. Beneath the vast canopy of stars, where the moonlight touched the sacred stone of shrines, they performed the quiet rituals meant only for the gods' eyes. The air would grow heavy with incense, a mix of myrrh, cedar, and honeyed oils that lingered like whispers over the temple courtyards. Lamps flickered in long corridors, casting golden halos upon hieroglyphs that told stories of creation and rebirth. Every movement, the pouring of water, the lighting of a wick, the placement of a lotus, followed rules laid down centuries before. Time seemed to stand still inside those walls, as though the world outside no longer existed. For the Egyptians, the gods were never asleep, and so long as they were awake, the river, the land, and life itself would endure. The high priests, dressed in linen robes bleached pure as moonlight, moved silently through the halls of stone. Their sandals brushed against the cool floor, echoing faintly beneath high columns carved with the forms of divine beings: Isis, Osiris, Thoth, and Ra. At the heart of the temple, in chambers few eyes would ever see, rested the sacred statue of the god, hidden by veils, untouched by sunlight. Each night, the priests would awaken the statue through ritual, washing it with pure Nile water, anointing it with perfumed oils, and clothing it in fresh linen. Offerings of bread, figs, and wine were placed before it, along with burning incense whose smoke rose like prayers toward the heavens. Outside, the world slept in silence, but inside the temple, an invisible conversation took place between mortal hands and divine presence. The priests believed that if they did not perform these sacred acts, the gods might feel neglected and chaos could seep back into the world. Not all rituals took place within the grand temples. Along the banks of the Nile, smaller altars dotted the landscape. Simple stone platforms where fishermen, farmers, and mothers would leave offerings at night. A few drops of milk, a handful of grain, or the faint aroma of burning herbs were all tokens of devotion. They prayed for protection from the river's moods, for fertile floods, and for dreams free from the reach of restless spirits. In the quiet hours before dawn, You might have seen a woman kneeling beside the water, her reflection trembling in the current as she whispered a name, perhaps a child's, perhaps a lost husband's. Her words vanished into the sound of the river, carried downstream to the temples where the gods, it was said, listened through the water itself. These humble acts, unseen by most, were the heartbeat of Egypt's faith. Each offering, no matter how small, was a thread in the great tapestry of devotion that bound the people to their gods. Waning Gibbous Moon paragraph 4. As the night deepened, certain temples became gathering places for rituals too sacred for daylight. In the Temple of Karnak, priests studied the stars, believing that each constellation was a reflection of divine order. In other sanctuaries, initiates of mystery cults met in secret chambers, where oil lamps painted soft halos on the walls. There, they spoke of death and rebirth, of the journey of the soul through the underworld, and of the promise of the dawn. They drank sweet wines, recited hymns, and sometimes bathed in cool Nile water drawn at midnight, believing it held purifying power when the world was at its quietest. For them, the darkness was not something to fear, but a sacred veil that separated the mundane from the divine. Beneath it, one could glimpse eternity, not in grandeur, but in stillness. The moon reflected off the river, and they believed it was the eye of Thoth himself, watching and recording all things. To the ancient Egyptians, night was not merely the absence of light. It was a time of passage when the sun god Ra journeyed through the underworld, fighting chaos to ensure that dawn would return. The priests mirrored this cosmic struggle through their midnight rituals. They would chant verses describing Ra's voyage through the 12 gates of the night, each gate guarded by serpents and spirits. Their words echoed through the dark halls like ripples of power, sustaining the fragile balance between order and disorder. Outside, the villagers slept peacefully, unaware that within the temples, their safety was being renewed through sacred sound. The Nile flowed beside these rituals, its surface catching faint reflections of flame and star. The river was part of every prayer, every song, a listener and participant in the drama of divine rebirth. When the first light of morning touched the horizon, the final hymns would be sung, and the temple doors would close, leaving behind only the faint scent of incense in the dawn air. And as the priest stepped into the soft light of sunrise, the world seemed new once again. Birds stirred among the reeds, and the waters of the Nile shimmered gold with the promise of another day. Few among the living ever witnessed the midnight rituals that sustained this order, yet all felt their effects. In the gentle floods that nourished their fields, in the calm that settled over their dreams, in the rhythm of life that never broke. The Egyptians did not see worship as mere ceremony, but as a daily renewal of harmony between heaven and earth. Each night, through their offerings and chants, they kept the world alive, in perfect balance with the gods. And though the temples now stand silent, their stones eroded by time, you can still imagine the flicker of torches, the murmur of prayers, and the slow, eternal heartbeat of faith echoing through their ruins, just as the Nile still flows, carrying their devotion forever toward the sea. As the stars wheeled silently above the desert, the ancient Egyptians settled into a sleep unlike ours, one filled with ritual, reverence, and quiet wonder. Night, to them, was a sacred realm, ruled not by the absence of light, but by the gentle dominion of dreams. Just as the Nile flowed endlessly through Egypt, they believed the soul too flowed through unseen channels each night, wandering between the waking world and the afterlife. Sleep was a small rehearsal for eternity, a nightly descent into the same journey the soul would one day take beyond death. The hush of the desert blended with the slow murmur of the river, creating a rhythm as steady as breath itself. Families lay together on cool mats woven from reeds, the air heavy with the scent of lotus oil and smoke from the last embers of the hearth. The night was deep, eternal, and alive with unseen spirits who drifted like wind over the water. They believed dreams were not mere illusions, but divine messages, a bridge between mortal life and the gods. In temples devoted to Serapis and Imhotep, dream rituals were performed for those who sought healing or guidance. The supplicant would sleep within the sacred precincts, often after ritual bathing in cool Nile water. Priests burned myrrh and whispered invocations as the dreamer lay upon a mat of papyrus, waiting for visions sent by divine hands. If the god visited them in a dream, it was seen as both blessing and prophecy. The messages could come in symbols. A lotus blooming might signify rebirth. A crocodile could warn of danger, while calm water meant divine favor. When morning came, the dreamers told their visions to the temple scribes, who recorded them carefully on shards of pottery or thin sheets of papyrus. In this way, even sleep was woven into Egypt's sacred system of meaning, a nightly conversation between human hearts and celestial forces. Yet, not all dreams brought comfort. Some spoke of restless spirits, Diak and Ba, souls caught between worlds, wandering through the night air. To protect their homes, Egyptians placed amulets near their sleeping places, the Eye of Horus to watch over them, scarabs for rebirth, and small figurines of Bes, the dwarf god of protection, whose laughter was said to drive away evil. Mothers would murmur lullabies to their children, songs as old as the pyramids, each note a soft shield against darkness. They feared that bad dreams were not simply imagination, but visits from envious spirits or messengers of imbalance. To dream of falling, of drowning, of losing one's voice. These were signs that something was wrong in the spiritual rhythm of one's life. And so, when dawn came, the first thing many Egyptians did was speak their dreams aloud, releasing their hold so that no shadow might linger in the waking world. The priests, too, studied the patterns of dreams. They believed that when one slept, the ka, the vital essence of the soul, left the body to wander. But unlike the dead, it always returned with the light of morning. This nightly voyage mirrored the journey of Ra, the sun god, who sailed through the underworld each night and was reborn at dawn. Thus, every sleeper participated in the cosmic rhythm of death and rebirth. To awaken was to rise again, renewed by the divine current that flowed through all things. The Nile, glimmering beyond the temple walls, seemed to reflect this truth perfectly. It too disappeared into shadow only to return, full of life and promise. The Egyptians saw no difference between the flow of the river and the movement of the soul. Both were eternal, both carried mysteries, and both promised that even in darkness, there was the certainty of dawn. Some of the most sacred burial texts, the Book of the Dead, the coffin texts, and the Amduat, describe the soul's journey through the night, passing through 12 gates guarded by strange beings of fire and shadow. The Egyptians saw these journeys not only as maps for the afterlife, but as reflections of what happened each night in dreams. When the dreamer closed their eyes, they too entered their own underworld, a realm shaped by memory, desire, and the whisper of gods. Sleep was not to be rushed or ignored. It was a sacred voyage, and so the ancients respected it deeply. Even the poorest homes held charms of protection beside their beds, and many believed the gods themselves could visit through the window of sleep. The act of resting beneath the stars was, in itself, a quiet ritual of trust. Trust that life would return with the morning sun, as surely as the Nile would continue to flow. As dawn approached, the first birds began. The Nile flows on, silent yet alive, carrying with it the echoes of thousands of years. Its waters, dark and mysterious by night, reflect the endless sky above, stars mirrored in the gentle ripples. Long after the temples have fallen to sand and stone, after the cities have crumbled into dust, the river endures, unchanged in purpose. To the people who once thrived along its banks, the Nile was more than life. It was memory made visible. Its floods wrote new chapters into the land each year, nourishing crops, sculpting fields, and leaving behind fertile soil imbued with the very essence of creation. The river was both witness and participant, observing human triumph and sorrow with quiet patience, as it had done since the first settlements. And even now, its eternal flow reminds us of a world that moved in harmony with the divine, a rhythm of life and night, of birth and dream, and of a faith carried gently through the ages. Every village along its banks, every temple that rose toward the sky, owes its existence to the Nile's enduring presence. Generations of Egyptians drank from it, bathed in it, offered prayers into its currents, and trusted that its waters would sustain them. Children grew up hearing the river's lullaby. Farmers measured their lives by its rise and fall, and priests performed midnight rituals to honor its divine essence. The river was a teacher of patience, a keeper of secrets, and a silent recorder of history. Through flood and drought, joy and loss, it remained unshakable, offering continuity to a world that otherwise seemed fleeting. For those who lived beside it, the Nile was an eternal companion, a source of wonder, reverence, and quiet comfort. And for us, even now, we can imagine its timeless presence, flowing endlessly across the land, linking the past and the present in a single, gentle motion. The legacy of the Nile extends beyond the daily lives of the ancient Egyptians. It shaped their beliefs, their art, their understanding of the cosmos, and their journey toward eternity. The river inspired gods, rituals, and myths, from Hapi, the giver of the floods, to Isis and Osiris, whose love and loss were reflected in its eternal rhythm. Every lotus blooming on its surface, every heron gliding through its reeds, became a symbol of life, hope, and rebirth. The Nile was a mirror of the heavens, a bridge to the divine, and a reminder that even in darkness there is the promise of renewal. To gaze upon it, even now, is to glimpse a world where human life and natural rhythm intertwine seamlessly, where the passage of time is measured not by hours, but by currents, seasons, and celestial cycles. At night, when the stars shimmer across its surface, the river seems to dream alongside those who once slept on its banks. Its waters carry stories of kings and priests, fishermen and children, and every soul who has walked beside it in centuries past. The Nile teaches patience, respect, and reverence for forces greater than ourselves. It is a reminder that life is cyclical, that each night is a prelude to dawn, and that even in stillness, there is motion. To listen to the river is to hear the whispers of eternity, the slow, deliberate pulse of a world that honors continuity, dreams, and the sacred flow of time. Each ripple is a word, each reflection a thought, each current a memory of a civilization that thrived in harmony with the divine and the natural world. For travelers, historians, and dreamers alike, the Nile remains a symbol of connection. It links us not only to ancient Egypt, but also to the universality of life along great rivers. A reminder that water sustains, shapes, and teaches. Its legacy is written in monuments, manuscripts, and myths, yet it is also found in the quiet, invisible ways it has guided generations. The soft glow of moonlight on its surface, the rhythmic pulse of flowing water, the gentle hush of night along its banks. To imagine standing beside the Nile at night is to feel a continuity that transcends centuries, a bridge between then and now, a calm invitation to reflect, to breathe, and to rest in the awareness of time's gentle flow. As dawn rises over the horizon, the Nile gleams gold beneath the sun's first light, whispering promises of another day, another cycle, another moment of life renewed. The villages awaken, the reeds sway, and the river continues its eternal journey toward the sea. And if you close your eyes for just a moment, you can carry a piece of that calm with you. The slow heartbeat of history, the eternal rhythm of the river, and the knowledge that, like the Nile, time itself flows endlessly, patiently, and softly, cradling all who dare to dream. Here, beside this eternal river, the story of ancient Egypt is never truly over. It lives in the water, the stars, the night, and within the quiet chambers of your own mind as you drift gently into sleep.